All right, howdy, folks. Welcome back to Love City Island. This is Dr. Flo's Good News Show. Today we are with Stacia J. Turner of Fractal Doula.
Hello.
It's so good to see you. So welcome to this podcast. This podcast fills your ears and heart with positivity. It's hosted by me. This delightful show is dedicated to bringing you uplifting stories, inspiring interviews, and a refreshing dose of optimism. In a world often overwhelmed by negativity, we're here to remind you that good things are happening all around us, and each episode features heartwarming tales of everyday heroes making a difference, remarkable achievements that defy the odds, and innovative solutions that bring positive change to our communities and beyond. And so today, on my first inaugural episode of the Good News Show with Dr. Flo, I've got Stacia J. Turner, who's been here from the Taking Up Space podcast all along. How's it going today?
Great. Happy Juneteenth.
Happy Juneteenth. Okay, so on the Good News Show, and welcome Waldo, and welcome back, it's Ashley, to our live podcast taping. You're going to hear
my
this.
cousin.
Hey, cousin. Good to see you. You're going to hear this on the Taking Up Space podcast, and you're also going to hear it on the Dr. Flo Good News Show. Stacia, when we met you at first, you were working in environmental justice and activism. Can you bridge us in like 2 minutes from the environmental justice work that you're doing to where you are right now on your life path?
Sure. So yeah, when we first met, I was working in environmental nonprofit, trying to get new updated parks in Black and Brown communities across the Northeast, which was fulfilling work, but the nonprofit game be nonprofiting, it has its trials and tribulations. And I still, I will always be an environmentalist. The environment is a part of my spiritual practice. But one of the things that I felt called to see is that what was really sparking my joy, my passion, my attention was using nature, earth, connection to the natural environment, connecting that to mental health and mental health outcomes, and how there are a lot of health, spiritual, emotional disparities in Black and Brown communities because the environment, both socially and physically, are often so disinvested in that people don't feel enticed, safe, invited to commune with nature, to be in park spaces safely, to be outside, to commune with nature, to have their own spiritual practice with the environment and the elements. And so I felt really called to explore mental health and pregnancy and birth, and that connection to earth and nature, as like a better pathway than kind of being stuck explicitly in the nonprofit world doing environmental justice stuff, if that makes sense.
For sure. And so how did you bridge the environmental justice into your present path?
Yeah, well, I think that, so I have been working as a doula and like a community birth worker, in addition to kind of pursuing a clinical license in mental health counseling. And in both of those spaces, both in birth space and in mental health spaces, I'm low-key always asking questions about like, what's your connection to your physical and social environment? What kind of foods are you eating? How much time do you spend outside? And not from a place of judgment, but I think that a lot of times, in intentional ways, Black and Brown communities have been distanced from engaging with nature and green space, and outside is free. It doesn't always feel safe, and that's valid, and that's something that we can talk about as a community, but it is free. And so I think that as a part of my own personal ministry, it's reminding people that even looking outside from your apartment window, taking a walk outside, observing the trees, the birds, the grass, the bugs, that's free. And it's something that is very cathartic for a very busy and complicated, chaotic world, being able to like use what's accessible to us around us, that is true empowerment to me.
Amazing. Amazing. I love that you have found a way to weave your care all into one little package. Your care of the environment, your care of the body, your care of the mental health of people. It's all woven together. Can you share a recent heartwarming story that inspired you with everybody?
A recent heartwarming story. Um, well, yeah, I can say that I really love watching families that I've supported through my birth work. Like, you don't really realize how quickly time passes until you've like been in somebody's birth and then you see a child turning one and you're like, wait, what? Like, what
Mhm.
even is time? And there's one particular Black family that I really admire. They're definitely goals. They live in Ward 8, which is one of our like most challenged wards in the DC area, but they have like the cutest house. They have two boys, and they work together as a unit that is so empowering to see. The husband was so supportive. The way they parent their children is very much so on the gentle parenting tip, which, whew, I mean, I believe in, but for any person who has a tiny human to raise, like that's, and to not scream at them, that's, that's a whole lot. I mean, I do think it is what we should be doing, but also it takes a lot of energy and intention. And so just the mother of that family recently connected to me so that we can have a park date with the boys. The baby is almost at 1 now. And they have another son who is like 7. And so I'm really excited to connect with them and have a park date with the kids and check in with each other and how things are going. It really feels like a full circle moment to like be a blip, but such a pivotal part of people's stories and journeys, to like be a part of their birth and to be a part of like the memory of like a human coming into consciousness is just feels really powerful. And having a park date seems like a very beautiful full circle moment to all of the things that we just talked about.
Hmm. Hmm. What are your feelings that you go through when you're in the birthing experience with someone? Is it a metaphysical thing for you, or is it more just these are the facts? The baby's coming, now we have a baby here. How has witnessing birth and being a part of that process of, bringing people into life and perhaps coaching them into death? We heard yesterday of a friend who is on his last days, so he's going through palliative and hospice care. What is it like for you to really be face to face as often as you can be with people who are coming into the earth versus people who are perhaps leaving and transitioning on to perhaps a different earth?
Right. I love that question. And it just reminds me of my brand and why I have that brand, Fractal Birth, because I feel like, being a part of birth reminds me how precious life is, because folks still die in birth, particularly, unfortunately, Black women and Black birthers, and their babies. And I don't say that lightly, but I say it to say that like life is precious. And I think because we live in this system of like, medicalized births and medications, that we can sometimes be out of touch with remembering how precious life is. And when you are a part of a birth space, and particularly in those moments when a life is about to emerge because of the way our systems are set up, there's a lot of tension. Most of my clients are predominantly Black, so that tension of like, will these humans make it through this process? Like, I'm always praying, I'm staying as grounded and as present as I can and providing just a web of protection into the space. And so it's a beautiful thing, but there's also, it is very grounding to remember how precious life is by being a part of that experience and feeling so grateful each time a birther and baby make it out unscathed. I am so grateful and I give thanks and gratitude to our ancestors and the spirits that be each time that it happens.
Where do you feel the overlap exists of Black and Brown populations and the need for calm birthing processes as perhaps restorative justice?
Oh my gosh, I love this question so much. Honestly, that question is what like drives me to be at this intersection of, birth work, mental health care, and the connection to like the environment and nature and spirituality. Because unfortunately, there is still this legacy of racism that is deeply ingrained and embedded in our medical healthcare system, as I'm sure every Black person who lives in America and has experienced the healthcare system has their own experiences, and observe it if you are a healthcare worker. And so there's this weird tension between people believing that we need to have birth in a hospital, and yet the outcomes being so poor in the hospitals for Black people giving birth. And that tension is one that I'm here to question as a birth worker, and to empower people to have the facts, to be intentional about the decisions that they're making in their birth process. Because on the mental health side, we're learning so much more about consciousness in birth, and how a child is conscious before birth, and the emotional implications of having a violent birth experience for both the birther and for the baby. And we know that there is a legacy of granny midwives and Black midwives who were safely birthing Black children for the majority of the time frame that we've been on the continent of North America. And it's really an intentional capitalist campaign that doctors try to make the idea of midwives seem backwards and primitive so that they could monopolize the market for birth. And that legacy still lives today. And so a part of my process is not to judge folks who decide to make the decision to have a birth in a hospital, because that campaign, that legacy is really strong. And there's a lot of resources and money and propaganda behind it. But it's to provide people with the tools and the empowerment to believe that they can create a safe birthing environment by being intentional with who they bring into that space. And I'm when I'm blessed enough to be one of those people, to really take it very seriously, to pull all of my energetic love and presence into that space to have healthy outcomes.
Amazing. Who are some of your rock stars in your work? Who are the people whose stars you are hitching your wagon to on the ride up the success journey?
I love that question as well. So I've been working with an organization called Mama Toto Village, and they are a well-known Black perinatal health organization in the DC area. Their executive director, Azza, is a home birth midwife. She's also a graduate family counselor, who's about to be fully licensed. She's just out here doing all the things, mentoring so many of us, myself included, raising her own family of children, and just creating a space for, workforce development within the perinatal space that is, Black led. She really has inspired me on my journey, and I know that she has inspired so many of us who are working in the birth world in this area. Community of Hope is another organization that is also Black midwife ran, and they are beautiful in that not only do they provide a suite of social services, including housing, general health care, but they also have a whole birth center, which is the only birth center in the DC area where Medicaid clients can go and have a non-hospital birth if they qualify, if they don't have any risk factors. It's such a beautiful space. You feel that it's run by Black women. Just the vibe of it is, it's clean. It has like beautiful earth tones on the walls. They've got tubs where you can have a birth, you can birth in a tub. And this is using Medicaid, right? So like, I mean, praise it. There's like, and I've had the pleasure to attend one birth there. And when I tell you, that birth made me kind of low key never want to like attend a birth in the hospital, because the energy was just completely different when you feel held and protected by a Black midwife in a place where there's not beeping machines and that like gross sterile smell, and you're in a tub and you have your family there and there's a kitchen where you can bring your own food. It's just an entirely different kind of vibe. And there's so many more people who, I can't even call to name now, but just in general, I'm so inspired by the resurgence of Black midwives and other birth workers who like are really putting their heart and soul into changing those perinatal outcomes for Black women and birthing people.
I love this. I love this so much. So if we were to future cast a little bit into your very, 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 very hopeful future, do you see yourself owning a facility like this or directing something in this arena, or where do you see your
Oh
work
no.
taking you?
I mean, I will definitely be engaged in those spaces, uplift them, work and collaborate with them. But personally, would like to have much more autonomy in the work that I do. I'm working to have a full suite of like energetic services that I can provide. Doula work, end of life doula work, birth doula work, and then mental health care work, as a therapist or life coach, and to really be able to serve the people in this kind of para-health professional field, being able to serve them in those different ways and to work with organizations like those, to put on workshops and community events, to do one-on-one. I learned the hard way, I think, in my nervous breakdown through the pandemic. What I learned is that I really enjoy the one-to-one or like smaller group work. That's where I feel like my passion burns more brightly, where it's the most efficient. And so it's not that I'm not capable of like running organizations and programs. It's just not what I enjoy the most. And I learned that through trial and tribulation, and I don't regret any of the experiences that I've had doing, programmatic management type work. But I've found that my calling is really to do that deep kind of like one-on-one group work.
I love it. I love it. So what does a week look like for you these days?
So these days, in the past month, it's been a lot of just studying, on my study grind. I went on hiatus of taking bursts last month because I am about to go into clinical internship for counseling. So that means I will start to have actual clients for counseling starting in the fall. And so, you can't be canceling clients' therapy appointments because you have to attend a birth. So right now it looks like a lot of trying to ground myself in getting through graduate level coursework and online. Our summer session has been online. And for me personally, like, while I love the freedom of being on the computer, as a person with very heavy ADHD, just like the digital classroom environment is really challenging for me. So I've been using this time to really heal my relationship to school and academics. I've really been triggered in some ways that I'm grateful for, because it's made me evaluate some of the ways that I was inappropriately placing self-worth and value on this idea of my academic ego and like my intellectual ego. And and a lot of those things needed to fall away. And so when I get insecure about school and I'm like, why the hell did I do this again? I try to find some stillness and the other day kind of had the epiphany, like, there's some parts that need to like be eroded away through the trials and tribulations of this academic space. And there's these parts and programs of who you thought you were and areas of self-worth that you don't really align with. So what does that look like for you to be spirit-led and have to be in this academic space and need to have success to move forward, but no longer have the same kind of drive and motivation because your sense of self-worth is not aligned with how smart you are, and are you getting better grades than other people, and are you getting, the highest A, even if it's killing you like emotionally and mentally to try and perform in those ways, particularly as a person with disability. And so I've really been trying to finesse my schedule to be able to have time to study, but also to make sure that I'm like balancing my life with getting activity outside, preparing myself for internship, making connections for people to do, some life coaching on the side and stuff like that, and having time for creative space, and just trying to juggle all of those things does take more energy than it seems like it would.
And I know that you're doing a great job because like so many others, that you are loved and lovable.
Thank you for that. I receive it.
And that's what I love about you. And you operate in power and you move in and out of these organizational spaces and you move in and out of these healing spaces extremely well because you know that you're loved and lovable and that others are worthy of knowing that they're loved and lovable. This is your last question, and then you can always come back for another episode with us whenever you have time in your schedule. My last question that I'm going to ask you, and I'll probably be asking everyone that comes through in this edition of Dr. Flo's Good News Network, in collaboration with Taking Up Space podcast, which is our shared property. Since you know that you're loved and lovable, how is that evidenced in your life in the present moment? How does loved and lovable show up for you as we close?
Oh my gosh, I think that we're here, firstly, just that we're here talking to each other. And I mean, the love between us is palpable for me. And honestly, if it wasn't for folks like you, of which I have few, and I don't say that bashfully anymore, I say it because I realize and recognize now the weight and the value of people who like really ride for you on a spiritual and energetic level. It hits very different than shallow friendships. And you have been so instrumental at really pivotal points in my journey with just like turning on the love glow and not love bombing in the sense of like, people can use a shallow love bombing to manipulate, but you are like the antithesis of that in that. And I think like why I seek out our friendship so much is that the authenticity is so real with you in the way
Yes.
that you provide insight and empowerment and uplifting. And particularly for a queer, Black, disabled person, it's like we need each other. We need each other as chosen family to really undo all of that programming, that sort of like toxic shaming that is a part of our culture and a lot of our family units. Like we need folks around us to kind of be a mirror and a reflection of who we really are, and to have those cheerleaders reminding us like, no, like this is who you really are. Don't forget, you can always do any of the things. You just have to know it and believe it. And like you have a a network of protection around you and support. And like I really feel that from you, and I think that energy, I know that that energy has brought me to where that I am today, because it's helped me to let go of the ego of feeling like I have to logic my way into, the perfect blueprint of success in the future. It's like, no, I'm spirit led, I'm protected, I'm loved, I'm worthy, I always have been, and it's not about me. It's about the gifts that I have to give back to the world, and believing that I am worthy enough to do that.
And believing that I'm worthy enough to do that. And you know, Stacia J. Turner, that sometimes that's the hardest part to come to, that simple worthiness. I
Mm-hmm.
deserve this education. I deserve this dream. I deserve to take up this space. I deserve to be seen.
That part.
I thank you so very much today for your willingness to be seen.
I thank you. I mean, I can't think of a better way to spend some time on Juneteenth than having this conversation with you.
I love you so much. And we got to find the archive and the release of that infamous interview that we did.
We really do. Honestly, we do, because that is
Uh,
like, that is
I'm gonna
internet gold.
I'm gonna dig for it tonight. I know that I released it publicly, and I'm gonna dig for it tonight because the ancestors do all things well, especially on Juneteenth. Anyway, thank you for being here. I will hang up from this and contact you on the back end privately. Where can people find out more about you and your magic in the world?
Sure. Thanks for asking. You can
Of
find
course.
me on Instagram at fractal birth. That's FRACTAL. Well, you can see it from my thing here, I guess. And it should be the same on TikTok as well.
Amazing. Yes, you're doing great, great work over on TikTok as well. Y'all check out Stacia J. Turner, Fractal Doula. Thank you so much for coming to the first segment of Dr. Flo's Good News Show. We're here because in a world often overwhelmed by negativity, we want to remind you that good things are happening all around us. Each episode, we're going to feature heartwarming tales of everyday heroes making a difference, remarkable achievements that defy the odds, and innovative solutions like the work that Stacia does with her doula work to bring positive change to communities and beyond. So until next time, we will see you very, very soon. May you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be free of all suffering. May you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be free of all suffering. May you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be free of all suffering. And may love hold you in its big, 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 big hands. Thank you,
I
Stacia.
love this. Thank you.
Take care.